Hey, Geekscapists, welcome to a brand new Geekscape podcast. I'm Jonathan London, your host. And if this is your first Geekscape, strap yourselves in for some pop culture talk. We're going to be talking movies, video games, comic books, TV, and really on this episode, we're going to be talking a lot of music. My friend Joel Reeder is on the show. Joel, I first met as the bassist and one of the singers, it's a singer, backup singer of the Berkeley rock and roll group, the Mr. T Experience. At the time, my favorite band of all. I think it's still my favorite band of all time, and that's where I met Joel. I'll actually let me show you something real quick, Geekscapists. If you're watching this on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch, you're gonna see this. This is actually me on the day that I met Joel and Mr. T Experience head honcho, Dr. Frank, right there. Look at how young I was. Look at how young we were. There's Joel just relaxing. He's like, oh my God, I hope this guy does not become a fixture in my life from here on out. Well, too bad. Here we are, pretty far removed from this picture, which was taken. I'm going to say this was taken in the spring of '98 in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, where I took the train down from Philadelphia, and we watched MTX play a college show, and then we missed the last train. So Kevin McCaffrey and I, Kevin's been on the show before, Kevin McCaffrey and I, my co-host on the radio there in Philadelphia, we popped a window open at a building on the Swarthmore campus, and we spent the night on the couch that was in the entryway. And it wasn't until the next morning we woke up to get the first train back to Philadelphia from Swarthmore. And we were so tired when we went to sleep because we'd gone to the train station before like cell phones and all, before you had computers in your pockets. We get to the train station, we realize there's no more trains for the night. But it's okay. We got to see the Mr. T Experience. And then let's find some place to just like sleep for the night. We're college kids. It's a college campus. I'm sure somebody will be around. There was nobody around. We popped a window. We crept into one of the college buildings thinking it was, I don't know, maybe like administration. No one's going to be there until it was the weekend. Nobody's going to be there till Monday. We can just sleep on these couches. It was like a sorority. These two radio nerds came down, and like it sounds like a plot of a movie. It's like they spent the night in a college sorority. Not that cool. Probably would have gotten arrested, really, but we were up with the I think we were just paranoid of getting arrested for breaking in, but we got up and we made it to the train, and I recorded this interview with the Mr. T Experience right here that you see the photo of, and that was 1998. And here Joel's on the show today to play a little catch up. Don't worry, we're not going to cover all those almost 30 years, but we're going to talk about his band, the Fatal Flaw, who has a new track out this week. They've also Joel's band, the Plus Ones, has a reissue out of their first EP, which is now a full album. I only had the EP. I was actually at their launch show. I think their first show at South by Southwest, opening for the Donnas. Joel can fact check me on that when he's on the show. And then they got shows in Boston coming up. Joel is constantly playing. The Fatal Flaw is constantly playing, and he's also in a Huey Lewis tribute band called The Power of Love. And if you're in the Boston area, you're not going to miss that. Here at Geekscape, we've been super busy. Thank you guys so much for bearing with us as we enter 2025 and Los Angeles is on fire. We had a full day's worth of rain today, which is incredibly awesome and necessary, and it just felt good to finally get rain after literally outside your window there's an inferno. So thank you for the well wishes, and also thank you for that last episode where we raised money for Dustin Rubin, our podcaster who lost his home in the Eaton fire. I got to tell you, one of Dustin's posts went viral because Crunch Fitness didn't want to stop his gym membership, and you guys got to look this up on like Blue Sky or whatever. Dustin posted his exchange with Crunch Fitness, and I think I said in the last episode where we talked about Dustin about how Spectrum internet was still coming to the house that didn't exist to reconnect his internet. That's awkward. He was getting texts from Spectrum being like, "Oh, don't worry, we're gonna take care of you." And now he was like, "Hey, I gotta like, we just lost everything. I gotta cancel these things." And he reached out to Crunch Fitness, and Crunch Fitness was like, you signed a contract. Oh, sorry, you signed a contract. And so that went viral, and sure enough, Crunch Fitness wrote him publicly. It was like, "Ah, sorry about that, dude." Last thing he wants to, they want to do is look like complete a-holes to people who lost everything in these recent fires here in Southern California. Um, One other big piece of news is we're launching the Hero of the Prophecy comic book February 4th on Kickstarter. Go to herooftheprophecy.com. You can find all the information there. You can follow the campaign. You can see when it launches. It launches February 4th. You're going to want to be a part of it. Paul and I have these cool exclusives like autographed copies. There's a photo cover that's kind of cool. There's a cool alternate photo cover that's going to be exclusive to the Kickstarter. We just got a lot of stuff that we plan on throwing at you guys. If you want them, cool. If you don't want them, cool. But you're going to want the comic book at least. And that's just going to cost you $5. Digital copy of the comic, $5. That's less than what Marvel and DC are selling their comics for. Okay. Sorry, I can't put Batman and Spider-Man in mine, but I put my brother in it. And for $5, you can read his adventures. Let's check that. Okay. Hey, I think that's everything. This is Geekscape. Thank you for hanging tight through the announcements. Let's roll the credits and let's come back with Joel Reeder and talk some music. All right, Geekscapists, welcome to the show. I'm Jonathan London, filmmaker, storyteller. I have a comic book coming out. I just love stories and talking about stories and making stories, telling them, sharing them. And I created this podcast back in 2000, started podcasting in 2005, obviously doing radio with Joel MTX, interviewing bands before that. But now I just, since 2006, I've been doing Geekscape to talk to storytellers, obsessed. From all of pop culture, and I love musicians. And I love can't wait to talk to Joel. If you guys are listening on the podcast feed, you heard a new Fatal Flaw song from late last year, Stop Pushing Me Away, as like the intro song, and I love it. It's quite the damn bop, as the kids say. And there's a new song coming out this week called Baby Tooth. And Joel's here to talk about it, as well as everything else that's going on in his world. My friend Joel Reeder, everybody.
Hey, Jonathan. It's so good to see your face, my friend.
Dude, what did you think of that old photo?
Well, I really did look nonchalant, I have to say.
I think you were like, who's this guy? I mean, you guys, the MTX had a lot of really like big fans, pretty passionate fans. I think that whole Lookout Records Gilman Street group, like those people were hardcore. I was not the scariest fan you guys had.
Not even close.
This is another nerd, just another nerd who's listening to this music, opining about girls, and coming to our show.
A lot of fans of the Mr. T experience tended to be gentle and intellectual.
Don't give me that kind of credit.
It was the thinking man's punk rock music.
Yeah. Did you see the documentary? You saw that Gilman Street documentary that was like 5 hours long?
Turn it around. Yeah.
I like that documentary, and it was made for me. I'll take a 4 or 5 hour Gilman Street documentary any day of the week. I went down to I met Jesse from Op Ivy at the screening. They had it here in LA back at the ArcLight when it was open, and I went, and I loved it. I listen to those stories. I'll listen to a Gilman Street story any day of the week, because I think so many people like myself romanticized that scene. And I just remember through Kerplunk, because it looked like a comic book, and being a comic book fan, I remember seeing the poster in Austin, Texas, standing there outside of the record store Sound Exchange and being like, would I like that? It looks like a comic book. Would I like that? And then when I put the headphones on, just being like, oh my God, it's like the Ramones, it's like Billy Idol. I don't have to borrow my brother's CDs anymore, or my brother's tapes. because this is my music. This is my music now. And of course, you find out what the record label is, and that opens you up to the Queers. It opens you up to Screeching Weasel. It opens you up to the Mr. T experience. And as soon as they were talking about guys like and the girls, they couldn't, you know what I mean? Like it's love songs about girls. I was like, okay, this is my band.
Highly relatable to a couple of sensitive young men like you and I.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think we're the same age, and like I'm still friends with Frank. He hits me up on like holidays. Like it was kind of cool getting texts from Frank on Thanksgiving and New Year's and stuff. But you and I are similar ages. Like Frank is older than us, but you're within a year or two of me, and so we have similar sentiments. And in all honesty, like I think a lot of us fans lived vicariously through you because you were the fan who joined the band.
It was quite the punk rock Cinderella story. I have 2 older siblings as well. I have 2 older sisters who introduced me to cool music. And my older sister, Nicole in particular, was a college student at the University of California at Berkeley in the early 90s. And so when she would come home on school breaks for holidays, she would bring me all these dubbed cassettes of music that was from Gilman Street bands, Lookout Records bands, the whole East Bay punk rock and pop punk scene. And that was my introduction to that music. And it really, because I was from that same time and place, I really fell in love with it. And the Mr. T experience was always my favorite of those bands. And the fact that I met Dr. Frank at Gilman Street when I was a senior in high school. I was 17 years old, visiting the campus to see if I wanted to attend school there myself the following year when I graduated. And I was in the audience. It was my first time at Gilman Street, which for any of your listeners who don't know is a famous, long-standing, all-ages punk club in Berkeley. And I was just there taking it all in. And outside the club, there was a telephone pole that had a flyer on it it said pop punk band Seeks bass player. And I thought, this is the dream. I'm going to graduate from high school. I'm going to leave my smallish town, come to Berkeley. I'm going to join a band like this that loves the same kind of music I do. My life's going to really start. So I grabbed the flyer off the telephone pole. I go inside. I see in the crowd the lead singer of my favorite band, and I work up the nerve to go and talk to him. And I show him the flyer. It says, the pop punk band Seeks bass player. We sound rather like the Mr. T experience. And he said, oh yeah, that's our flyer. Like, we need a bass player. And we put a flyer that said Mr. T experience Seeks bass player, and nobody responded. So we figured we just sound like the Mr. T experience. And they still only got a couple of responses. I said, oh, are you still looking? And he said, he said, I don't suppose you're a bass player. And I said, I am actually a bass player. And he said, how old are you anyway? And I said, I'm 17. I'm in high school. And his face fell. So yeah, he's 13 years older than us. He was a grown man. He was 30 years old. The band had been together, I think, almost 10 years at that point. Put out, half a dozen albums. But I was too naive to know that a grown man probably doesn't want to have a high school child joining his band. I just thought, this is perfect. You need a bass player. I'm a bass player. I love your band. I'm just going to call you. And I think he was like, sure, kid. But I had the phone number on the flyer. I call it up as soon as I get home. And it actually was not Dr. Frank's number. It was Jim, our drummer. And he answers and he's like, okay, that sounds great. Let's set up a date to come up practice. And I cannot believe it was just a perfectly serendipitous, because they were just desperate enough to consider letting, a minor join the ranks. And I was in the right place at the right time. That set me on the trajectory my life still remains on to this day. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't gone to Gilman Street that night.
It's kind of insane, right? Because it sounds like a movie. Because within a few years, you guys are touring Italy with Green Day.
Yeah.
Not, I mean, not for whatever that tour was. And I've talked to Frank a bit about that tour. It was because the tour fell short. It did not, the dates were not fulfilled for whatever reason. That tour was cut short. And Frank says, yeah, that tour would either continue, it would have bankrupted us or put us over, or who knows. But I mean, your other band, the Pansy Division, what I love about Green Day is they're very loyal to the scene, and they brought Pansy Division to play Madison Square Garden and all those other places. And you're a touring member or a member of Pansy Division, and I mean, think about it. Like, it is like the movie, like Rookie of the Year or something, where the kid ends up pitching like in the major leagues, and suddenly you're in Italy doing these big shows with Green Day, where a few years earlier you were like, I'm going to pull this flyer off of a telephone pole, and everybody's seen the flyer looking for band members. I mean, maybe not now, that's 2025, but back in the 90s, you see flyers on telephone poles or outside record stores looking for band members. I think it's the opening to my Real Big Fish video I did for Don't Start a Band. The first shot, somebody pulling a flyer off the front of a record store because they're going to join a band. Your head must have been spinning.
I think that between when I plucked that fateful flyer off of that telephone pole to me playing a hockey stadium in Italy for 10,000 Green Day fans was literally less than 18 months.
Holy crap.
I think, yeah. The speed at which everything happened at that time, I didn't have anything to compare the experience to. But now looking back, especially, the longer you're alive, the more the time seems to expand and contract. And, something that happened 5 years ago feels like it was just the other day. But so much happened in those first few years. It was so eventful. And I just was clinging on for dear life. It really is remarkable.
When you put it like that, it definitely is. And I've been out in LA now. Geekscape has moved out here in 2003. This will be my 22nd May in Los Angeles. But again, it feels like that night in Swarthmore, meeting you and hanging out with you guys, it does feel like I blink and suddenly I'm here. And I was warned as such as from the older people in our lives. The older people in our lives tell you in a blink you're there, right? And now that I've had Ophelia for almost 6 months, everybody was like, oh my God, it flies by so fast. It does. And I thought, and I don't have to go back far on my phone because she's only been alive less than 6 months, but you don't go that far back in your phone and you see the most profound physical changes in this creature that you brought into this world, your daughter. I know you've been there because you and I've shared, you're the person in front of me being like, yeah, this is her as a teenager, be ready for this. And you've kind of been warning me with that. Again, we just met in Swarthmore. It feels like a blink of an eye ago. And now we're like sending kid pictures to each other and you're telling me like, dude, buckle up for this. Get ready for her to ask for makeup.
To be fair, you probably have a few months before she starts bugging you for the Sephora gift card and her own cell phone.
Sephora, her own cell phone? No, dude, I'm so scared. I'm scared of all that stuff. I'm scared of the outside world having access to her. We sent her to daycare for 3 hours the other day. This is the most white-knuckled 3 hours of my entire life. And the daycare was awesome. They were sending photos like, hey, she's doing great. This is a photo of her hanging out. There's a photo of her playing. No, that's fine. I was losing my mind the entire time because the first time she was out of either my or Heidi's care. And help me, Joel, help me.
You're doing great. It really does get easier the first couple of years. You're white knuckling it, but you're doing great.
Well, let's talk because you recorded the EP with MTX. You then did the two albums that feel like the double album. I'm talking about Love Is Dead and Revenge Is Sweet and So Are You. I really want to talk about Alcatraz.
Okay.
Because I love Alcatraz, and Alcatraz did not get the response from what I could see. Alcatraz did not get the response that Revenge Is Sweet got as a continuation of the same pop punk sound from Love Is Dead. Love Is Dead was a fantastic intro for me to that band, and I was like, cool. Revenge Is Sweet felt like more of that train track getting laid in front of the train. I was like, cool, this is familiar, this is great. And I think a lot of the pop funk bands that were your peers, the Fat bands, the Lookout bands, they were putting out similar albums, one after another. And then Alcatraz comes out, and I think Alcatraz is incredible. I loved it. I think it was brave. It was cool. It's got some Dr. Frank raps on it. And I'll tell you when I discovered it, and you might remember this. You remember Ben Aqua, who had the website?
I sure do, yeah.
And I knew Ben because he was in Austin, and I would hang out with Ben during my breaks from college. I was interning at MTV the summer '99, and they got an advanced CD of Alcatraz, so that
Threw
maybe
it
the
right in the
music.
trash.
Well, no, here's what happened to that CD, because the music, they were solicited to maybe put on some MTV2 shows and stuff like that. So I, as an intern at MTV, I found it when it came in, and I was like, oh my god, the new MTX album, it's not going to come out for another month or two. I don't know. I dubbed it to a tape immediately.
Mm-hmm.
I went
Everyone did.
across Times Square to Virgin Records. I bought a blank tape, and I dubbed it immediately. And I listened, and I took it back to the apartment, and I listened to it, and I wrote a review of every track and posted it to my good friend Ben Aqua's website. And it was like, I love this album. It was like, and Frank remembers, and it was just like, dude, every track of this is fresh. It felt fresh to me. But when it came out, I think people wanted Revenge is Sweet and So Are Part 2.
Yeah.
Do you agree, or do you remember that response?
Oh, vividly. Yeah. I remember the response. The internet was sort of nascent back then, so there wasn't sort of the immediate backlash that now you can have instantaneous hate on. And I think that's a typical cycle now for any band or artist's new release. Like, there's the initial excitement followed completely by like, this does not live up to the last thing I loved by them, so, and it gets trashed, and then the pendulum swings back the other way until it's appreciated, and then that becomes the new benchmark. And then
you got Pinkerton.
Yes,
you got Pinkerton.
We got
Pinkerton. I mean, Weezer's Pinkerton is the example of the album that everybody trashed at the beginning.
Yeah,
and
I believe
that's crazy, because that album was great from the second it entered your Discman, as we had back in the day. I remember listening to that tape I dubbed before the album came out. I remember playing it for Joe Kirk. You know Joe Kirk out of Philly? Do you remember that dude? Sure. Joe Kirk? Yeah. I love Joe Kirk. School teacher Joe Kirk still sends me those Christmas mixes.
Yeah.
He sends you Christmas mixes.
Me too. I'm on the list.
Punk Christmas mixes. I love you, Joe Kirk, so much. And I remember him not responding well to Alcatraz.
Oh, he was one of the.
And I was like, dissenters. Dude, you're wrong. Bands have to evolve.
Well, you definitely were in the minority. You had an open mind, and to be commended for that. The tour that we did behind it, that's really where we could feel the enthusiasm waning.
The Donna's tour?
No, this is the Mr. T Experience headlining tour behind Alcatraz.
Okay, because I remember talking Alcatraz. You guys played with the Donnas at the Trocadero in Philly, and I remember talking to Frank about it. And he says, we couldn't have done the same album again. That was one of the only times, and I quoted this to somebody else, that the Mr. T Experience is the only band that I've seen open for a headliner that got that show. You guys got on tour.
Encore.
What's it called? An encore. Sorry,
an encore.
Not an entourage. You didn't have an entourage, but you guys got an encore as the middle band. I remember that distinctly.
Possibly an encore no one asked for, but
I don't care. I wanted
stepped up and provided it. Yes, I forgot that whole tour. Yeah, the whole tour wasn't with the Donnas, but that leg of the tour, the East Coast leg, coincided with CMJ, which was the College Music Journalist festival that would happen annually. And so there was a big Lookout Records showcase that was the Donnas, the Mr. T Experience, Pansy Division, and Ann Beretta.
Love Ann Beretta. It's a great band.
Those were insane shows. That was I think that was the show where it was almost canceled because there was a flood in New York City.
I couldn't make it up from Philly for that show.
Yeah.
In the head, Vinnie Curran, who ran WXPN Radio in Philly, got me a pass, and he bought it for me so that I could come up from Philly and cover CMJ in SEPTA, New Jersey Transit. It was flooded in Trenton. I couldn't even make it to New York City, and I felt so bad that Vinnie Curran had bought me that pass to CMJ in New York, and I had no way to get there. If I'd gotten there, I didn't have anywhere to stay anyway, so whatever. I would have walked
You
the
just
streets like I did in Swarthmore and slept in a freaking sorority's front entryway. Uh,
I'd never heard that story, Jonathan, from
yeah,
your introduction.
the night
I
I
didn't
met you,
realize,
I was homeless that night, I
the
guess.
night you met me, you committed some light breaking and entering.
the
The things you do for rock and roll.
that Alcatraz tour, talk to me about what happens to you, because you're still young enough to not have you don't have the reps, right? Like Frank had been through the ups and downs of people not responding to an album here and there, or you know what I mean, like people getting mixed responses. Like a more
Yeah.
veteran musician is, they could have been used to that, but at that point you're 18, 19, 20, 22, and this album that you guys poured a lot into, and you really had to kind of stick your neck out for this one. It had a lot of cool sounds to it that weren't familiar, and I thought it was a really awesome record. And suddenly, how does it feel when you're playing these shows and the response is not the same?
It's true. I didn't have any perspective on it. Well, the positive response for the previous two albums, which were my first full lengths with the band, Love is Dead in '96 and Revenge is Sweet and So Are You in '97 or '98. The enthusiasm and the relative success of those, that was the exception, not the rule. Like the entire time that the Mr. T experience had been a band before that was sort of a lot. They were always incredibly underrated and probably ahead of their time. You know, they were one of those bands that was not hardcore enough to satisfy the diehard punk rockers. You know, like too poppy for for people who wanted to mosh,
Sure.
and much too loud and chaotic for people who are fans of gentler pop music. So it really took the success of Green Day to be the rising tide that lifted all boats. And for a while there, all the bands that were on lookout, like we were in the mid '90s, benefited from the trickle down effect of that. And finally, the music that the band had been making for a decade at that point was in vogue and uh, could be appreciated in the moment. But you know, the second that the band stepped outside of those very narrow parameters, there was a lot of resistance. It's true that I didn't know how to handle that. I'm just a kid who ended up joining his favorite band, so I was a true believer in the music. Like I thought that the band deserved to be uh, popular even before I was a member. So I truly thought I had the naivete of youth to think like, this is it. We're just gonna, we're gonna be on a steady trajectory upward, and we're gonna be huge. We're gonna make it, whatever that meant to me at the time. And so any kind of setback like that was very confusing to the personal narrative that had crafted in my mind. That my head canon did not allow for that kind of rejection. But it's hard. It's like, also it's at the end of the day, it's show business, and you're standing on stage, and when you play one of your older songs, it gets a huge response and people are singing along, and then you play one of your new songs, and there's a, a noticeable lack of enthusiasm. Uh, it'll take the wind out of your sails a little bit. I'm sure that ended up being my final album with the band and the last tour, and I think it my faith in Dr. Frank as a songwriter and as us as a group didn't waver, but I think it was all part of the the confluence of events that led to me parting ways. Like it didn't help that it was, yeah, not well received by our fan base, and also, it's just like bands are like marriages. Sometimes you hit 5 or 6 years, and you guys have spent a lot of time together, crammed in a van or sharing a cheap motel room, and I think you know people are just on each other's nerves, and it can be hard to make a relationship like that last. The fact that I've been in my other bands for decades and decades, I think, is kind of a remarkable achievement in and of itself.
Well, I mean, at that point, you're like, let me do this thing, the plus ones. And was I correct that I was at your first show at South by Southwest at Emo's opening for the Donnas? Is that was your showcase show for South by Southwest in, I'm going to say 2000?
I don't want to shatter any of your illusions, but our
Yeah,
first
no,
show.
whatever. Well, I'm 46 years old. A lot of my illusions have been shattered many times over.
Yeah, that's right. It's unbelievable we have any illusions left, but here we are.
They're delusions at this point.
Yes. When illusion becomes delusion, like,
Yeah.
We've just transferred them over from like
It works. Just
dreams
add a
of-
D. We're good.
we're delusional that we think that, our kids are going to think we're cool in a
Yeah.
few years. You gotta.
Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta believe the lie yourself, or no one else will believe it.
So that wasn't your opening show. It was the showcase. I look at that EP also that's been re-released with Sounds Rad, The Miracle of Shame, the MTX one, and after what you said and going on through a whole tour with an album that's not clicking with an audience, and then Frank comes out with The Miracle of Shame, I'm like, oh, he titled it The Miracle of Shame. I love The Miracle of Shame. I think that's a fun 5 songs and it's great. I'm still a MTX and Frank believer. Always will be. He's a dear friend at this point. But the plus ones, that felt like you were like, okay, I'm going to take the center stage. I'm now going to navigate the waters for myself, and this is going to be my band. And I still think Month of Sundays is like one of the best songs. I love that song so much. I still want to hear it live, even though it's not a Fatal Flaw song. That is an incredible song. Oh, you don't love it that much?
No, I meant that shrug was sort of like it could happen. My current band, the Fatal Flaw, we play some plus one songs every once in a while.
I love it. And I love the Fatal Flaw, dude. You know I've loved the Fatal Flaw, and you've been in this band longer than any other band, correct?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Because, I mean, the Bombassets aren't getting back together. I love the Bombassets. Nobody talks about the Bombassets.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. The Bombassets, which is, a Mr. T Experience side project, essentially. It's funny for a band that's...
With the high fives. Don't forget the high fives.
I wouldn't, yeah. Actually, the Bombassets was the group that I wrote my first ever composition for. The first time I ever wrote a song was for the Mr. T Experience side project, and that's what that gave me the songwriting bug, and why I started the Plus Ones, which initially was also just supposed to be a side project when I wasn't busy with MTX. But I basically was, from the moment I joined MTX, I had an apprenticeship with Dr. Frank, one of the most gifted lyricists in underground music, and I had a front row seat for his creative process, and I owe so much to him teaching me, how to write songs, how to approach lyric writing, how to never cheat a rhyme. He was so meticulous.
What do you mean?
So thoughtful. He just would never. Well, sometimes if you are just trying to finish a song and get it over and done with, you could be tempted to kind of fudge, like, all right, at the end of this,
a pronunciation,
yeah. This word almost rhymes.
I'm going to shoehorn it.
If I kind of mumble it a little bit, he would never allow that. He had just really stringent personal standards, and
sure,
which I adopted from him. So sometimes I'd love to be able to just kind of say that's good enough. No one's really paying attention to the lyrics anyway.
But nerds like me, are nerds like me with
right.
the liner notes. I'm like, oh, I love it. And that Plus Ones show that I saw with the Donnas, the South by Southwest showcase, I poured over that EP of on the list. And Geekscape is the Plus Ones on the list EP that I'm talking about is reissued now from Sounds Radical. If you're listening to this on the podcast network or you're watching this, you go to soundsradical.com, and the label Sounds Rad has done great with the MTX reissues. It feels like you came home for this Plus Ones reissue. The question I have for you is, Jonathan walked away from that show with an EP of On the List. I did not know until this reissue was announced that you had recorded an entire album's worth in that area. I mean, maybe you didn't record it in that session, but you recorded it within that time frame. And where have all these songs been, and why were they not released earlier? Were they released earlier? Were they divvied out to comps and things like that?
Some of them were never released in any form.
I've never heard some of these songs, and it feels like a brand new album to me. I love the fact that you guys did this.
Yeah,
cheated me for 20 years is what I mean.
Listen, the only person I was cheating was myself, my friend.
Well, why not release these songs? Why release an EP with the Plus Ones instead of because Plus Ones went on to do full albums? Why wasn't this one of them?
So initially, the songs that are on our debut EP were recorded with the intention that they would be demos for an eventual full-length album. And everything that's on that album is from the same session. It was pretty quick and dirty. My roommate, Robert, was an intern at a world-class recording studio in San Francisco that REM and Neil Young and Third Eye Blind recorded at. And he could get us cheap time there after hours and during off days. So these were, these were done just like no click track, no computers were used. Like these were just supposed to be meant for internal use only. And then when we got offered to do an opening US tour for the Donnas, we realized, well, we should probably put something out. And this was all we'd recorded at this point. So we plucked 5 songs from the dozen or so that we'd recorded and released it in a rush job as our debut EP. And so some of the songs we were preserving for the eventual full length. There's a few ones that we thought these are going to be our big hit songs, our eventual full length album. So we got to preserve these. And then some other ones were eventually just didn't make the cut. Like it just kind of got lost in the shuffle. But the EP was the only recordings that we did with the original lineup of the band, which was me, Scotty Hay, who was a really accomplished guitar player from other bands in East Bay, and Dan Panic, who was in a bunch of Lookout Records bands. He was from Screeching Weasel and the Queers and the Riverdales and the Groovy Ghoulies. And so that lineup, which was together just for the first year or so of the band, that's the only time we got preserved on record. And those master 2-inch tapes got shoved in a closet at my sister's house, and I rediscovered them a couple of years back. They had migrated to her garden shed, and where they'd just been sitting there exposed to the elements for all this time. And I wasn't sure what was on them and if anything had been preserved. So I took them and I shipped them to my buddy Robert, who's relocated to his home state of Alabama. He opened up a recording studio there where he has an actual 2-inch tape machine, which are pretty rare to find these days. So he had the correct format to play it. So I sent them to him. He put them on the reels and tried to play it, and the tape basically started to turn to dust, which is happens with 2-inch tape if it's not preserved properly.
Sure.
So there's a technique that you can do where, like, literally the magnetic coating starts to flake off.
Yeah.
So you have to put it into essentially
what's a chemical bath?
It's a food dehydrator. You expose it to low heat for a long period of time, and it will, what they call, bake the tape.
The adhesive will go back to
yeah, but you can only play it one time before it disintegrates again. So he spooled it up after baking it for days and transferred it all into Pro Tools, and there were a bunch of songs on there that no one, including me, had heard in decades.
Holy shit. That is crazy. That's like an Indiana Jones freaking story. Like, that's crazy. You have this, like the warehouse at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, like this, you find this thing, and it's crazy when the MTX stuff was getting reissued through SoundsRad. Frank had similar stories, like somebody found this in a hallway under boxes. But the whole idea, and I think about that with film too, because I transferred all my film spools in film scanners were all disappearing. People just didn't have the gauges for 16 millimeter, 8 millimeter and stuff. But I took all of it and I paid to have it digitized so I can have it on hard drives. But in film, we'll do the same thing. It'll wash out. It'll start to degrade the images.
Mm-hmm.
But this whole idea that the stuff will literally just turn to dust. He's like racing against it. He got one last chance. That's nuts. And wow, you came out of it with the full album.
Yeah, and there's a lot of the songs. A couple of them we eventually did re-record with the lineup of the band that survived past that, the initial lineup of us as a 3-piece. By the time we got around to recording our first full-length album for Asian Man Records, we had a new drummer, we had a second guitar player, and Scotty, the original guitar player, was not much longer for the band. Like, that was the last thing he did with us, was track the first album. So there were songs that we redid for it, and some of them we had done for these demos with the three of us, and there were, like I said, some other ones that had been abandoned. But when I listened back, there's something about there's sort of an urgency to them, and there's an energy that can't be replicated, because also, we didn't know that we were doing the definitive versions of them. Yeah. So there's sort of there's a freedom to that, and I think there's at least a couple of them that I prefer the EP versions of these songs, that including there's the one song of ours that has been heard the most number of times, made it onto the soundtrack for the TV show The OC.
Which one? And Had, or which one was that?
So it's a song called All the Boys, which where I sing about meeting somebody backstage at the Troubadour in Los Angeles.
Yeah, the bouncy song.
Yeah,
it's very bouncy. I love that song. Yeah.
And the music supervisor of the OC heard that, and because it mentioned the Troubadour, which is a staple.
It's a staple here in LA.
And he's like, this would be perfect for. There was a guest character who was supposed to be a pretentious musician in a local LA band. Like, oh, we're gonna use this song to represent, like, You
didn't want to be like, hey, I do some acting on the side. I'm available.
No,
not that you're pretentious, but it would have been fun.
It's okay. I could have played a pretentious.
That's what I'm saying, Doug. Casper Van Dien has this story that I thought of when you were talking about the flyer with the MTX. Casper tells this story that he saw a casting breakdown that was asking for a Casper Van Dien type, and he's like, and he literally just like, "Do you guys want Casper Van Dien?" And he's like, "No, we're looking for Casper Van Dien type." No. We don't. So I'm sorry, Mr. Van Dien, but no, we want a Casper Van Dien type. He's like, I'm saying you guys can have, like, you guys want me to do it? We're looking for a Casper Van Dien type. It's too on the nose, sir. You are literally the person. It's insane.
Show business is rough. So the original version.
It's earnest. The original version. I imagine you guys are sitting there. You guys are recording this stuff midnight to 6 a.m. before business as usual at this nice recording studio, and you guys got
or Stephen Jenkins and Third Eye Blind.
Totally. And there's an earnestness to it, and I think that when you're in the punk rock and you're young in the punk rock scene, there's something to be said about earnestness and the sincerity and the grit of it, that sometimes when you're maybe more experienced, you don't make those mistakes, or you go, not mistakes, but it doesn't make sense. The stuff gets ironed out, and it shouldn't be ironed out. It should be art should, you should see the way that, and hear the prophecy. If Geekscape is, if you order this book, you're going to see that Marcelo, my artist, he's Chilean. There are exclamation marks in two panels. There are exclamation marks that when a character is surprised, there's just an exclamation mark above his head. It's pretty traditional in comics to be like, oh, I'm surprised, there's an exclamation mark. His exclamation marks are upside down, because in Spanish, the front end has an upside down exclamation mark, and the back of the sentence has a right side up exclamation mark. He put the upside down exclamation marks above the head, and I noticed it when he was doing the pencils. I was like, oh, these exclamation marks are upside down for alarm. It's the sense of alarm. And I was like, I'm fucking keeping that. That's cool as hell. And I pointed out to him, I was like, those exclamation marks are cool. And he goes, why? And I was like, because they're upside down, dude. In English, there are no upside down pronunciation, or like, the punctuations aren't upside down. And do you want me to fix it? No, no, we're keeping that because it's a signature. It's like the author has to be present in the art.
Yes, those are beautiful mistakes.
It's not a mistake.
Yeah,
It's the crafting of it. And if you iron that out, I think this earnestness, the sincerity, the artwork sometimes goes out with it. And when you
with
started,
digital recording and Pro Tools, it's far too easy to iron out every single imperfection, which is where a lot of the humanity is in music, especially. I
yeah,
think so. There's none of that in this debut album, this reissue of the Plus One's debut. It's all the raw uncut.
and you guys remain friends. That just the lineup, it wears on you. When you're doing things at an indie level, it's hard to maintain that. It's hard to run a car that is barely staying together because the maintenance is too expensive. You know what I mean? You're up against the Ferraris on the road, etc. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard
Hmm.
to do that stuff. Imagine you're touring with Green Day. Green Day gets the nice bus, you guys have the other bus, and like keeping up with those Joneses, like in that style, whether it's the music industry or another profession like that wears a lot. And the lineup on the Plus Ones, it just the wheels come off for some members, huh?
Yeah, I think it's a big ask. Like that band was always my dream. I had dreams of being a singer songwriter, and I broke off from the the successful band that was the only band I'd ever known because I knew there was no room for two songwriters in it, and I felt like I had to like, give it a shot to express myself. But that means I'm totally invested in it, and asking your friends to sleep on floors and to drive for 16 hours in a van across Texas for years and end for to split $100 and is a big ask. And I'm still grateful to everyone who has played music with me in any one of my groups. Uh, and
What do
those
you
are
do?
all my.
I mean, I'm sorry, but like with something like Geekscape, I've kept it going for 18 years. Sometimes because at times we're the cockroach. Like, the idea that we're
Mm,
making money on ads and things like this is like incredible. And we give 70% of what comes in to our podcasters as they generate it. And so everything is, they own their shows, everything's creator owned. And in we split the pie with them, with the majority of everything going to them. I don't know how else to incentivize somebody who wants to create their own thing than to just put a roof over them and be like, "Hey, I'll host it. We'll pay the bandwidth. We'll pay all this stuff." But like, how do you incentivize people to do it for that long? It's something that it's like you got to learn to be nice real fast. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you have to learn to be, especially in close quarters. Like, you got to learn to be nice real fast. And like, what are some of the things you've learned in trying to keep the wheels on? Granted, like the Plus Ones maybe was claimed by your move across the states,
mhm.
but now we have the Fatal Flaw, the power pop group of the new century, which I love so much. Um, what do you do, Joel? Like it's a practice in interpersonal relationships. But like, how do you continue to incentivize people as they gain children, as they grow families, as their jobs call to them? How do you continue? Help me as a middle-aged man. How do you incentivize people to keep this thing that you started, like Geekscape, the Fatal Flaw, your bands? How do you continue to do this?
I think you got to set reasonable expectations. So
Hmm.
that's one thing for to be clear. Like now that my the band that I'm in now, the Fatal Flaw, is three-fourths of us are fathers, and so the idea that we're gonna be getting in a van and driving, 6,000 miles across the country or flying off to Europe to play in squats is just off the table. Like we know that we've got other responsibilities, that supersede whatever ambitions we may have. So that's clear. So it helps if everyone's on the same page about what the goals are of the group. And I think it's really important to, although, you want to make music with other talented people, hopefully. And I'm really fortunate that I play with amazing players. But way more important than that, you have to be able to tolerate one another. So I think it's more important to be able to like and respect and get along with your bandmates than it is that they necessarily, be virtuosic at their instrument. So personalities are more important than performance.
Were
And
you always
that's
good at it? Were you always successful with it? Or were there times when you're like, no, that tears it, and this friendship is now in the rear view?
yeah, I've had a lot of bandmates. So I can't say every relationship ended well, but I'm on pretty good terms with everybody. That's a lot of water under the bridge too. And now I've been playing with the same guys for over a decade. Um, so I don't know. I guess that hopefully that means that I'm not too difficult to get along with.
You're great, dude. And we had this guy Team Goldie up in here, and he played with one of your band members or something. Like there was a Team Goldie connection that I texted you about. I thought that was great, and then I introduced you to Steve Coulter, SW Loudon, who's the power pop guy. Do you know he lost his house in the Eden fires, Joel?
Didn't hear that.
Dude, last weekend I went to see Nerve Herder, and his band Right All High was going to open. 3/4 of Right All High lost their homes. SW, Geekscape, is go back a couple months. We have this Generation Blue episode where Steve SW Loudon, that's his nom de plume. He was on the show talking about the geek LA like scene here that created Weezer and Nerve Herder and a bunch of bands. And it was a great episode. He's a great writer, and he's a great documentarian of that mid-90s geek scene, of that 90s geek rock scene. He lost his house. I texted him. I was like, dude, I'm so sorry to hear this. But Marco DeSantis lost their house. Like it was awful. And so he go up to this Nerve Herder show, and you're super excited because you want to see Nerve Herder and Right All High. I love Right All High. Never seen them live. And the fires took that, and they took a lot of stuff, man. It's really terrible. But 3/4 of Right All High lost their homes, Steve being one of them, and that's terrible. And I introduced you guys because if he's a power pop documentarian, my favorite group is the Fatal Flaw.
Wow, they were Altadena residents.
Yeah,
I'm guessing.
Yeah. I mean, I look up and Marco's wife is on the news talk. I mean, and I recognized it because I saw the front. What was left of their house was just these two pots on the front porch, and I was like, I know that house. Oh my god! Oh, now they're interviewing his wife because they found the wedding ring in the ashes. It was nuts, just absolutely nuts. The decimation that's happened out here, and
that explains why he and I haven't connected yet. I guess he has a pretty good excuse. He's been a little bit preoccupied.
Yeah,
our thoughts out here on the East Coast have been with all of you in Southern California. I'm glad you're doing all right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm far enough away, surrounded by concrete, here in the valley, but we definitely saw a fire from our balcony that was 2 miles away, and if the wind had picked it up and sent it northward, we're getting the hell out of here. It was crazy. I mean, I still have a couple bags that are packed sitting here because I'm too lazy to unpack them, but who knows? I mean, I hope nothing happens, knock on wood, but
let's say you're just prepared. It's not that you're too lazy.
25's been fucking crazy. Can we chill on the 2025? Can a man just can we just come on Geekscape, talk about pop culture, pop music, movies? I mean, can we talk about the Star Wars, the Marvel stuff, and the nerd stuff that we love, and just enjoy being geeks without the freaking world seeming to end, whether it be by government or natural forces, for once in 2025? Please, can we take a chill pill?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, please, just give us a timeout because we got to promote Baby Tooth. This is a new song you guys have coming out this week. I'm guessing you'll find it on the Fatal Flaw SoundCloud. You can find it on all the other digital. What's the best place to go to for the Fatal Flaw music?
I like to steer people towards our Bandcamp. I think actually
Bandcamp.
Bandcamp.
That's what Bandcamp, not SoundCloud. You're not a rapper. It's Bandcamp.
Not that you know about, Jonathan, but
Nah,
listeners,
you might have yourself a
I,
little burner SoundCloud.
I got a few secrets that I have to keep from you.
But he'll be up
But yeah,
next on the podcast for talking about his rap album.
I'll come back with a fake mustache. And
Yeah,
Bandcamp I think has the best fidelity out of all the streaming services. But yeah,
and they have Bandcamp Friday.
They have Bandcamp Friday. People can toss us a tip in the digital tip jar if they feel like it, but they're also welcome to download it or stream it to their heart's content. And we're on Spotify. We shot a really cool video for Baby Tooth in our practice space using one of those 360-degree cameras. Have you played around with those at all?
Oh, I'm stoked now. Now I'm excited. I was excited because I liked the song, and I'm glad you sent me the song. But now I'm really excited. I got to see this video, man. I'm a visual person.
Yes,
I'm a visual person. I gotta see this video. And Joel, like this is, and I tell this to bands a lot. The Boys in Punchline, I think Steve was hemming and hawing a little bit about pre-selling an album or something like that, and I was like, no, you're pre-selling the album. Like you are putting out these quote unquote singles in building an album. Am I wrong?
That's the goal. I would have liked to sometime this calendar year in 2025 collect all the songs that we're putting out as singles, and then
knock them out.
I think so. This Baby Tooth will be our third single with the newest iteration of the Fatal Flaw. It's kind of like the Fatal Flaw 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
And I do sincerely think that's probably the best sounding stuff I've ever produced in my life. I think in between when I recorded the debut EP by the Plus Ones that we were just talking about, and when we finally got in the studio to make our full-length album, I discovered the last new band that really truly blew my mind wide open and changed the way I thought about songwriting and performing, which was the band Super Drag.
Yeah, you sucked out the feeling.
Yeah,
you sucked out the feeling.
I
love that
right
song.
Into my soul. And
you're the one who sucked out the feeling.
It was me. It was me, John Davis of Super Drag. I'm sorry. But they were hugely a big inspiration for me. And he has an incredible voice, and he really has this grit when he sings, and he can really in that song "Who Sucks Out the Feeling," which is their best known one. He's
he lets it air,
shredding.
Yeah, it's the signature sound of that song.
And I wanted so badly to be able to sing like that, and I just kind of have a sweeter, natural tenor to my voice. And when I listen back to the first Plus Ones album, I can tell I'm trying to sing like that, and it's not a perfect fit. And that's why I prefer some of the outtake versions that are now in the expanded version of On the List. I think that I'm much happier with my vocal performance in them because I'm not trying to sound like somebody or something I'm not. But over the years, I did finally figure out that right balance of rocking hard and loud guitars, but sweet harmonies and vocals. And I think I finally feel like I'm in a place where I'm crafting these songs, and the production is lining up with it. An old friend from back in the East Bay punk rock days named Chris Dugan is mixing all our stuff now, and he for the last several years he's become one of the guys in the inner circle of Green Day, and he's mixed Weezer albums, and he's mixed Green Day albums, and been nominated for a Grammy. And now because he's an old friend, he's mixing my band stuff too, and it sounds awesome. So it's all finally coming together for these songs. And yes, I'm still a guy whose brain is wired to think of in terms of albums, album cycles. I think of songs as a collective and as a snapshot of a band at a certain period of time. And I think the way that people listen to music, especially new music now, is a lot more a la carte. It's one single at a time. It's part of a playlist, and you pick and choose, and that's all right. I can evolve with the times too. So it's nice actually that each song kind of gets a little bit of a showcase. When you're spreading them out, doing one new song every 6 to 8 weeks, instead of just dumping them all out at once. Uh, there's a much better chance that everyone is going to get a chance to be heard. And the two songs that we put out at the very end of 2024 have been listened to many thousands of times more than any other of our stuff. Like we're finally learning, I think, how to present ourselves and play the game a little bit. And it's not easy when you're used to. I'm not used to self promotion, and I'm not that comfortable with it. But I mean, I could talk about this stuff all day with you. So it's really that we're putting out these actual every song's gonna have its own accompanying music video, and it makes it like people want to have a visual to go along with it. Like you said, you're a visual guy, and the marriage of a cool image and a cool song, nothing really beats that. And
Well, I
it's really
couldn't
helped
play a
us a lot.
lick as a musician. I couldn't play a lick, so visuals what I was left with, and I gravitated towards it. And it's somebody who creates indie art and tells indie stories myself, and I create a show where storytellers of all sizes of fame and success and have come on. I I follow artists as fans and friends, and anytime something comes out at the indie level, I always tell myself, like, is this the last thing they're gonna be able to put out because life gets in the way? And I gotta tell you, Joel, I'm just so happy that you've continued to put music out, and I can't wait for you to re-record Month of Sundays because it's the one that it's the hit that it's the hit that got away. But no, do not take my influence to heart at all. But I love that song. But I just love that you're continuing to put out music no matter what. One day we'll be in the ground and that's what will be left of us. And I just love that you've continued to persist and do this no matter what, because it's inspiring to me. I'm like, if Joel's going to be putting out music, then I better be telling stories. If Joel's going to go to bat, I got to go to bat. We got to keep doing this. You know what I mean? Because otherwise, what are we doing here? I'm barely good at that. I'm not really good at anything else. You know what I mean? So as somebody who every time I see something like that, I think this could be you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Not because somebody's gonna die or not, but like, it's hard
Well,
to make this
we just
stuff.
don't know, right?
You
And
never know. Like, would I want to go see No Use for a Name again? Yes, but I remember skipping a couple No Use for a Name like shows, and then No More Tony's Fly, and it's like, fuck, that was one of my favorite bands. Never gonna see them again. And I remember that every time. Like Eric Ernst, we're in the middle of we had my friend Eric Ernst was like, "Do you want to go see Nerford this weekend?" And I was like, "It's difficult with the baby. It's difficult with this. Let me try and swing it. It's in Santa Barbara, which is an hour plus away. Like, let me try and swing it because you never know. You never know if like Linus suddenly punches Perry Grip and they don't want to be in a band anymore. You just
you
don't
want to be
know.
there if
It's
that
too
happens.
hard. Yeah, you want to
Want to be
be
in the
there.
audience.
And they
Yeah.
played with the Pulsars. Like the Pulsars are like classic band. And I was like, dude, when am I going to get a chance to see the Pulsars ever? They hadn't played in like 20 years or something like that. Like, when am I
I
ever
think
going
I
to get a
saw them.
chance to see when am I going to get a chance to see the Pulsars ever? And I saw
I'm
them
pretty sure. I'm pretty sure I saw them opening for Weezer on the
on the
Pinkerton tour.
Pinkerton tour. That was the tour that they opened for Weezer on. When was I going to see the Pulsars ever? And they played on Saturday.
They
It's
were the first band I
crazy.
ever saw that played to backing tracks live. I'd never seen that
It's
before.
really cool. Oh,
They started
it's a
playing it, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, these ghostly keyboards started playing, and whoever was mixing them, the the keyboard backing tracks were conservatively 3 times as loud as the rest of the band. So just it was noticeable, but that was sort of like, where's that coming from? Do they have musicians under the stage?
Yeah, they sounded great. They sounded great on Saturday, and again, you never know. So I'm just glad you keep putting this thing out. And Geekscape is like, reward this man for coming on to Geekscape. Joel, is it cool if I play one of your songs on the way out? I'll put it on the MP3 version of this. If you're listening to this on the podcast, can I play one of the songs on the way out? One of the ones that came out late last 2024. I love the Stop Pushing Me Away. Like, quit
It is
pushing me
more
away. I
than
think
cool.
okay. So Geekscape is that's what you're going to hear. If you're watching this on video, on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, whatever you're watching this on. Go over to soundsradical.com, get the reissue of On the List, and also go find Bandcamp, not SoundCloud. Go to Bandcamp and go ahead and start downloading all the Fatal Flaw stuff that you can find. There's full albums on there, there's EPs on there, and there's the singles from last year and this new one this week, Baby Tooth. Hit that little, whatever it is, like hit like a follow or whatever it is, so you know when Joel's putting out new music, because I know I do. I love it. I love getting a notification that you're putting out new music. I get so excited. I'm like, it's Christmas.
Even if I'm doing it just for you, Jonathan, it's worth it.
You're not, man. Like it's. I think when I saw you post that thousands of people have been listening to the 2 songs that you put out last year, I was stoked. I felt reaffirmed in my faith in you. I was like, yes, dude. Yes, finally, people are catching on to this dude's music, and I love it, dude. Been a fan and friend for, at this point, 27 years. You're gonna have to kill me, my friend.
You and I are lifers, my friends.
People listening are like, you guys have been talking for 2 hours. So we're going to be here the whole time. Are we going to listen to you your whole relationship? You were going to be here for 28 years at this point? No, Geekscape is we're not. The Fatal Flaw, Baby Tooth comes out this week in +1's On the List reissue. Sounds Radical. And then if you guys want to go to herotheprophecy.com, we started our Kickstarter on February 4th, where you can get the comic book that I wrote as a love letter to my brother Paul, who you may know as the Cruiserweight Tag Team Champion on WWE about 15 years ago. And when he left WWE, when they had their contract unrenewed, and Paul and Vince McMahon wanted to do something else, Paul was like, what do I do now? And it's actually scared me. I was like, oh no, his dream of becoming a wrestler on TV is now like in flux. Uh-oh. He kept wrestling on TV, by the way, for Robert Rodriguez. But it scared me because I saw this like doubt in his eyes. In that weekend, I started writing The Hero of the Prophecy, a story about my brother being transported to a fantasy world of sword and sorcery, like in the 80s movies. And they see wrestling through a portal and they think it's real. And they're like, look at how he fights in this arena. We're going to summon him to save us from this evil wizard. He must be the hero of the prophecy. And he shows up and he's like, what? I'm a pro wrestler. And they're like, what is that? It's like, it's pantomime. Sorry, I'm not really a fighter. Good luck, pal. So if you're a fan of Army of Darkness or Galaxy Quest, Three Amigos, hopefully you like this comic book. Herotheprophecy.com. And you can read it while you listen to the Fatal Flaw. That's my suggestion. Their music feeds me, and that's the way it works.
It's a good pairing. I read it and I loved it, by the way, Jonathan. I'm proud of you.
Dude, thanks. I didn't expect you to read it. I just sent it to you to be like, hey, here's the thing. Thanks, man. Well, we got more story coming where that left off. So thanks, man. Geekscape, share this with your friends and all that. That's all I ask. All right. It's free. Don't hate, create. Love you. We'll be back soon with another Geekscape. And then we got the new Captain America movie coming out. There's lots of cool stuff to talk about. So this is a place to find it. Love you. Don't hate, create. Peace. You can say bye too, Joel.
Bye, everybody.